your bees.
The title of my new little series, which isn't going to be every month, is Reminiscences and Observations. And I stole it. It wasn't mine originally. I started my career off in horticulture, and I used to take the Gardener's Chronicle, which became defunct years ago, but it was the magazine that professionals took and very keen amateurs. And there was a gentleman there by the name of Charles H. Curtis. And he did this little piece regularly, and it was the first thing I turned to in the book. And there were all sorts of interesting things about his gardening experiences and plants he'd come across, and maybe give you a tip about how to propagate that certain one and so on. And I always thought that could be adapted for beekeeping. And it's been in the back of my mind for years, but I haven't done anything about it until recently.
So tell me, what are your reminiscences in this article about?
Well, the first one is about how I actually started, and how I acquired a lovely WBC hive, almost complete with its inners as well, for the price of just £1, which doesn't buy anything much these days, does it? But and it was quite a lot of money for me. I'd only just started my career and earning a decent salary. So I had this beehive for £1, and it explains how I was just thinking that I would like to, be lovely now to find a swarm to put in it, and I looked on a branch and there it was. So that's what I said, it was a chance.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be. A beekeeping season without a visit to the moors and putting your bees in on the heather is like having a luncheon and not having a dessert after the main course, really. Finishes it off nicely.
I mean, taking bees to heather is always, a bit of a risky thing, because you never know whether it's going to be a good year or a bad year, but you have to prepare your bees.
There's always a profit, even if it's not in honey. Well, the bees may get some in the brood chambers for their winter stores, but yes, I think part of the excitement of it is whether it's going to be a good year or a bad one. But I mean, do you go to Exmoor?
I personally don't take my bees to Exmoor.
But you go to Exmoor, you go in the daytime.
I do.
But if you have a reason for going, like getting your bees down there in the cool of the morning, you go down there and you're releasing your bees about 6:30 in the morning. That's the time you see deer walking along the ridge. And when you go to collect them on the way back, and there's a full moon and it's nighttime, and the deer are walking along that ridge again, silhouetted against a night sky, that's all part of the harvest from taking bees to the heather.
You may.
I was thinking of one beekeeper in particular, I won't mention his name, but he was having a chat with me, and it was only his second season, I think. He said that he understood that selection was very important in beekeeping, and I agreed, it certainly is. Well, I've got some very large bees, he said, and I think because they're large, they will bring in lots and lots of honey. So I went over to visit him, and he said, this colony is so prolific, he said, it's a national hive, and I've built it up from a single brood chamber to 1.5, as we call it, because obviously they don't have enough room. Well, what he didn't know that he'd done was to put the half was one that he'd used as a super the previous year with drone comb in it. So with no queen excluder there, of course, the queen had a real riot of an egg-laying session, and he couldn't tell the difference between a drone and a worker bee. So I had the unpleasant task of telling him that he was rather misguided in the matter.
And this is the thing, isn't it? We all learn from our mistakes.
But I never forget going to his house and seeing all these drones, and he was so pleased with them.
Oh, and you just punctured his balloon, David.
No. Well,
Deary dear.
It happens all the time in beekeeping. Well, again, when I started beekeeping and I joined the local association, I was told that I had to have BeeCraft, and this was a little magazine. And it came, as you can see, these black and white ones here. See how we've advanced from this to what's come through people's letterboxes. I think sometimes these were distributed through the association. There's about 12 pages there. The front is just advertisements. Compare that with the front of this month's issue. Isn't that fantastic?
Well, here it is.
Yes, look at that.
Yes.
And that is in 66, can you add up 70, 50 something years, and BeeCraft has gone from that to that.
Well, that's what people want now.
Well, when
modern
you consider
magazines.
the amount of voluntary work that goes into BeeCraft, it's done by enthusiasts. That's what makes it a magazine, and that's what makes it comparable with that glossy that I've got on the table there that you probably don't want to advertise.
Certainly don't, thank you very much.
No.
Country life can stay out of it.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it, because I'm actually comparing the modern BeeCraft with it.
Yes. Well, you've obviously got a fount of stories and...
I've got a fount of these magazines in the other room, and they're unbound. So the ones that I've put out, I shall have to find and put them back in their right places afterwards.
Well, that's wonderful, David. Thank you very much indeed for giving us a glimpse and a little taster of what's to come.
Right, pleasure.
Bees, bees, hark to your bees. Hide from your neighbours as much as you please. But all that has happened to us you must tell, or else we will give you no honey.